Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mark Friedenthal. I am the founder and CEO of Tolerisk. For those who are not familiar with Tolerisk, we provide risk tolerance technology designed specifically for the fiduciary process. So it is not just a personality profile, but also incorporates financial data to measure your client's mathematical ability or capacity to take risk. If you've not seen Tolerisk recently, please reach out to us. We are thrilled to schedule a demonstration so you can see how advisors use Tolerisk to accelerate practice growth and reduce compliance risk. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out the new 2024 T3 Inside Information Survey of Advisor Technology, where Tolerisk outscored the big guys now 3 years running. Okay, enough of the shameless Tolerisk plug. I appreciate you indulging me. I am very proud to introduce our thought leader speaker for this afternoon. Noreen Beaman was a founding partner of Brinker Capital and served in a leadership role for nearly 30 years, culminating as the CEO and taking assets under management from $12 billion to $30 billion in that 8-year period, at which time they merged with Orion. Noreen became the president of Orion Advisor Solutions for 2 years and has continued on as the vice chair of their board of directors. Having earned a master's degree in executive coaching from NYU, Ms. Beaman currently practices as an executive coach and head of leadership development for East Bay Merchant Partners Coaching and Consulting. Noreen continues to serve the industry on a number of boards, including Commonwealth Financial Network, Next Chapter, St. Peter's University, which I think is your alma mater, and of course Orion. Noreen has been recognized as Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year for the Greater Philly region, which is our region as well. She's also been named to the list of Women to Watch by Investment News and selected as one of the region's most admired CEOs by Philadelphia Business Journal. Candidly, Noreen has accomplished so many things that I really had to trim down the list simply for time. Hopefully I got at least I got a good number of the highlights. But this afternoon, we're going to get to ask Noreen how on earth she was able to navigate a large and still growing firm through such diverse economic environments and substantial industry evolution. And I do mean we, by the way. Please write your questions in the chat. Our sales manager, Tiara Prince, will be monitoring and relaying your questions. So I know I see, and we have some heavy hitters in the room too. So I'm expecting some pretty deep questions there, folks. So without further ado, please welcome our guest thought leader, Noreen Beaman. Thank you for being here.
Mark, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I think the highlight that we're missing on mine is I am a proud mom of 2 Bernese Mountain Dogs, as well as a mother of 3 children. But my Bernese Mountain Dogs are out on a ride, so they're not going to disturb us. So, but I am a very proud mom of that. So, I think we had said we'll start, just give you a little bit of my background. And I think I want to tie it to risk. And there's so many things we could talk about. But one of the things that, starting at Brinker 30 years ago, and I was the CFO of a startup, which is kind of interesting. Now it's interesting. Then it was like, what are you doing? But most importantly, in my journey through those 30 years, I spent 6 years working with financial advisors in the field and working with them when fee-based business was really very, very, new, but 1998 to 2004. And if you think of those markets, it shaped me in a way to understand the importance of understanding risk, as Mark shared with Tolerisk, is like really gathering that data. What is the capacity for that end investor to take on risk? And in that process, having to sit across the table, not only when you first solve the problem by building a portfolio, but actually going quarter by quarter to go over the quarterly report. So I earned my stripes, and I can go back to 2002. I could tell you exactly what I was wearing in those meetings, because you think about it, those are 3 years of a down market. And that was what people said. We've never had 3 years of a down market. So that experience really shaped me, and then came back into Brinker to build product. The '08 financial crisis, another opportunity to better understand the behavioral aspects. Again, you tell people, stay the course, stay invested. But what are we not really saying? We're not hearing the fear. And so how do we support financial advisors as they support their end investor clients? And not only that moment in time, understanding in my own personal life. My dad had passed away. Now I'm supporting my mom in terms of retired school teacher. I'm her financial advisor. So for those of you that are financial advisor, I am no longer my mother's financial advisor. I am her daughter. But the role of the financial advisor in understanding how to navigate those moments of time was really that behavioral aspect. And that's where we really spent a lot of time at Brinker bringing behavioral finance into our model.
So in your, I think, if I saw the numbers right, you're 29 or so or 30 years as an executive at Brinker. I mean, you saw the company through wars, through easing and tightening monetary cycles, oil at $30, oil at $130. What was the toughest environment, and how did you adapt?
So, it's interesting on perspectives. If you were to go and speak to Chuck Widger in that moment in time, he would tell you the early 2000s were harder because we were so much smaller. We got to the financial crisis when you think of we had hit 10 billion and then we're back to 6. And what was hard around that moment in time was really a focus on our service model needed to get better. Our products needed to improve. We were not serving our clients at the level we needed to. So again, understanding that we needed to improve our communication. And I think in each of those moments, we used them as an opportunity for creative destruction. What else could we build? What else could we be doing to better serve those of our clients, meaning the financial advisors, so they could keep their clients in the seat? So I look back, I would tell you the pandemic, what was really hard around that is the safety. For the first time as a leader, I was not only concerned about navigating the support and making sure we could really continue to serve those advisors, but also the safety of our team. When I go back in time and think about that, which is so hard now, you're like 4 years later, you're like, wow, we actually hired a doctor who would be there to check temperatures, be on call for our people. Like that was a very, very difficult time. Again, not being all together. I think a funny story about that though is I said, we go home that week, right? That March 16th week. And we practiced, we did the dry run. We were good to go. We were laptop ready, but I'm like, we need video conferencing. And they're like, Noreen, pick your laptop up and look in the camera. I'm like, we have video conferencing. So, again, you learn stuff too as you go along. But I think that taking a breath and thinking about what was most important through all of that was keeping calm and supporting and listening. And I think the more you listen, the better able you are to react to support. So yes, the one constant we all know is the markets will go up and down and you cannot control them.
Yeah, I've just listened to how you described the history and, the anchoring points, basically crisis to crisis. I mean, in the early years, you have the Russian debt crisis, 98-ish. You have followed by the dot-com bubble burst, the financial crisis you've talked about, COVID, of course, still fresh on everybody's minds. So when you even look at how you framed that journey, I mean, it really was in that kind of context. So what advice do you have for today's leaders, whether they're running small advisory firms or the next Brinker, about how to prepare for the next crisis that, of course, we can't really predict?
So what I think is interesting, in moments of crisis when you're reacting, it's very important, but it's also the time to start building. Because if you're building the next thing then, because most people are going to go into a shell, right? Like they're going to think about, oh my goodness, we have to just conserve and go tight. This isn't a time to spend crazy, but it is a time to say, all right, let's allocate resources for what's next. Let's start thinking about now, because then you emerge, because we always emerge, right? Like this is, thank goodness that from a resilience moment in time, but as you emerge stronger. So it could be a moment in time where we say, let's, one of the things that we started building, because, the markets were going up, I'm trying to think back to the years, but maybe it was, 2012, 2015, those are like kind of interesting markets. But when we think of, we created a go bag. And we think about, it's an emergency, we got to go. So let's build our go bag. So we started creating materials just to give advisors so they would have them. So you don't plan for a crisis in the crisis. you plan for the crisis in advance of the crisis, right? So you have a go bag, like let's go and grab the bag because we know that something's going to happen. Here's another interesting, the reason we were laptop ready for the pandemic is because of Superstorm Sandy. We were not ready. And being on the East Coast and you're on the same area, like it's 11 o'clock at night. We had all the resources. I'm on the phone with my guys and like, we're going to go to SunGuard. We've never really done this before. We had practice, but we'd never moved the whole organization. I'm like, okay. And it didn't go as smoothly as we had expected. Unfortunately, the markets were closed and that gave us some time and we never missed a beat. I never, ever want to be in that situation again. So we then build resiliency within the organization. So that's another thing. From every single crisis, what can you learn? And what can we do better in the next time? Because you're going to make mistakes. That's just real. I would say if you don't make any mistakes, you're not working hard enough.
Or you're not recognizing your mistakes.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. I achieved some degree of fame, I'll tell you, at Superstorm Sandy as well, because my house was pictured on the front page of the Voorhees, New Jersey Sun newspaper when the giant tree crashed through our deck. Yeah, we were locally very famous. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And thank goodness no one got hurt.
Thank goodness. That is very true. So you talked about learning from each crisis, and obviously, that comes with, in my case, a few gray hairs. How much of good stewardship is proactive versus reactive? And I know we think of reactive as a negative, but I was still working in corporate America at 9/11, and I noticed big differences in how people just responded during a crisis. And for me, that, like for my parents remembering, November 22nd, 63, when Kennedy was shot, we all remember where we were on 9/11. And like those are the indelible kinds of memories I have. And clearly they were reactive, but some people seemed able to do that. And other people, as you said, understandably just retreated into that shell. So how much of good stewardship, how do you achieve that balance? You want to prepare as much as you can, but you also have to be ready to be reactive because sometimes it is unforeseeable. How do you balance that out?
I think when as you shared, I just finished my master's at NYU and went back for executive coaching and organizational consulting. And in that process, it was a lot about behavior and the importance of psychological safety. And I think if we look at organizations that are resilient, they're resilient because they create an environment where people are heard and issues are bubbled up. One of the things I think is most important, not that we can always get it right, but let's make sure if something's not right, let's talk about it. Let's not pretend like something's not happening. And that creates, I believe, a sense of, hey, it's okay if I raise issues. So in this moment that we're unsettled, I know that we can be psychologically safe together, that we can do this in a sense of community versus it's not one person. No leader. A leader is only a leader because they have followers, right? I think that's kind of so, obvious when we think about it. But the whole concept really comes into, do you create an environment where you're bringing people in, or you know everything? And the more you know everything, the more fallible I believe you are. And so there's moments in time when you need to stand up and say, we got this. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to figure it out together. But you do need to be resilient in those environments where risk is, the unforeseeable.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay. No worries.
This is a little bit off topic, but I'm very curious your thoughts and your perspective on this. And maybe this is a touchy topic, I don't know, but the financial services industry is still predominantly white and predominantly male. Mm-hmm. How do we as an industry do a better job supporting women and minorities in the workforce so that we have more diverse perspectives? Because I think in the context of risk and in the context of trying to deal with the unknowable, the unforeseeable, we want to surround ourselves with people that have different perspectives, because that's, I think, we're going to be better prepared. So how do we solve what I perceive to still be a pervasive problem?
It's I reflect on this with some of my counterparts, female counterparts in the industry, and we're like, how is this still an issue? Like, oh my goodness gracious, like what are we doing? One is acknowledging it. Like, we have an opportunity to create an environment that makes it more interesting for other people to want to participate. And then we need to create on-ramps here, right? So it's very difficult to say, all right, I want a really diverse C-suite. If we haven't, the people that are ready to be in the C-suite don't have some of those characteristics, or they're from a diverse background, or they're, however it is, gender, ethnicity. But if we haven't built a critical infrastructure to allow them to succeed, then how are we going to expect that we're going to be able to pull them into the C-suite? So it's making investments. And I think this is a broad base. Our industry, had I not had the experiences of having a flexible work environment, again, I talked about 3 children, I never would have stayed in the financial services industry. But I worked at an organization that provided flexibility in 1991, which is actually was unheard of then. Working from home. Oh my goodness. Should we have always been able to go to the dentist and not take the day off? I think so, right? Like, so we think of, look back now that we're in this environment where people have flexible work environments, I think we'll see the ability to do that. But even in flexible work environments, what's the downside? I don't see the talent. And if I don't see them, how am I not helping them come along? Those small conversations as you're walking from a meeting to another. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think we need to focus and really be intentional about that. And that's why I take phone calls all the time. People are interested in our industry, like, I'm open to that. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can network. And then I think the other part is the empower the network. And I'm a beneficiary of that.
Do we have to even go earlier than that? Do we have to make the opportunities or the encouragement available in high school, in college? Do we have to stimulate the interest for people that may, for whatever reason, have been steered in another direction, whether they weren't encouraged or whether they otherwise maybe they weren't interested because they didn't see people that they were inspired by or identified, as being similar? I mean, how, I can. Your point's well taken, right? You're not going to fill the C-suites if the EVPs or SVPs are, all still look the same. But right. How far down do you have to go? You still have to have the people applying for jobs and to ultimately give them the jobs, to give them the pathway to work up until those executive positions.
So here's I think it's fun things. One, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Matt Gardner with the 4 Money Bears, financial literacy. Like, let's talk about that. Like, had I not been in public accounting, I don't know if I would have actually made it to financial services. I had different visions, but I had access, and I said, oh, this is kind of neat. I want to continue to do that. Then I want to give a shout out to Suzanne Syracuse. When she was on Investment News, she did a lot to push diversity, showing, like, look at these amazing different careers, these amazing women of all different diverse backgrounds. See yourself as one of these women, right? Like, see yourself in one of those opportunities. But I agree with you. I love what we're doing with CFP, like getting the CFP into the colleges, and what we're going to do with planning makes the entry. You're not selling a product, you're solving a problem. And all of a sudden, you're re-lensing how you come in. Now, and we know in financial services, it's not just sales. It's just not, and everyone thinks it's not investment banking. It's a lot of different careers within the industry. So how do we open those doors? And it's not the traditional, hey, I caddied or I played lacrosse, which I hate to say that because, like, there's amazing people who've done all those things, but that was the traditional feeder, and now we need to get more broad-based. The MMI is doing a lot with bringing in around. So I just think there's a lot of good things that are happening, but ultimately, Mark, each of us have to own it. And if we do a little bit, we can move things forward. I think that's important.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring us back to our intended topic. I appreciate I was very interested to hear your thoughts. I appreciate you sharing them. So, besides the crisis to crisis or all the varied economic variation and challenges, the industry itself has evolved. And I'm sure you can recount a lot of things I'll miss, but you know, we went through even changes in you had so many advisors that were broker dealer affiliates, right? RIAs were small when you started,
Right.
I mean, I don't know the numbers offhand, but I mean, the pendulum has clearly moved in that direction. You see a lot more RIAs. You see a lot of these hybrid setups. A lot of what had been broker dealers have formed RIAs. We've gone from predominantly commission-driven brokerage type business to advisory or managed money type business. I remember learning to read the Wall Street Journal as a kid with my grandfather, and stocks traded in 12.5-cent increments. And you found out what happened the next day when you read it in the paper. I mean, like,
right.
think about how far we've come in terms of just information flow and access. And I mean, I don't know what it was when you started, but you wanted to buy a stock, you bought 100 shares. You were buying a round lot, and you spent a couple $100 to do it. And then all of a sudden you had discount brokerage, and you had, discount brokerage when it started was $50 a trade, and then $30 a trade, and it kind of went down. And a few years ago, it's zero, right? And so now you have the information is what is traded and what is valuable. So I feel like the industry has gone through all of these shifts and changes throughout that 30-year period, where you were not only trying to navigate the crises to crises and all the economic stuff, but an actual changing industry. So how do you think about that? What did you learn from it? What can you share with us who, again, may be trying to guess as to how the industry will continue to change? And I don't know whether we'll get it right, but I'd love to hear your wisdom on this.
All right. So I've been at this so long, they used to have stock certificates that they used to drive around. So like, think of the guys at the end of the day. So, it's been a journey. We used to have to go, when I was an auditor, we had to go in the vault and actually, verify the certificates were in the vault of the bank. Thank goodness we're not doing that anymore. I had the opportunity to hear Don Phillips from Morningstar speak, and what he had said, which has struck me, goes, what can we do today that we couldn't do before? And when you think of all the things that you just mentioned, of all the changes that we happen now as we sit here today, what can we do now that we couldn't do before? And that's where we can create engagement. We have democratized access to products. When you think of ETFs today and mutual funds, all different types. Private investments are now in that process with interval funds, are now part of that democratization of making sure the mass affluent has the same opportunities as that institutional investor. And I think the art is the importance of advice and building of those portfolios, because with all this noise, right, all this information, how do you distill it into the process of, I need to plan for retirement. I need to pay for my kids if you have children, college. How am I going to take care of my parents? Do I have philanthropic goals? What is the money's job? And at the end of the day, that has not changed, but how we can support that investor and what the money's job is has much improved. And that's where I think behavioral finance is like kind of that additional rail. And that's why I have to give a shout out to Allie McCarthy and Dr. Daniel Crosby, who are part of the Brinker team, and really taking that to that next level. And they continue to do that today. But how are we helping people better understand? Let's think about your goals and what's the money's job, and how are we going to put that money to work in a way that you can actually meet that goal. And I think the retirement crisis that's going to happen, where people need to manage their own money in retirement, is a big deal. And how are we as an industry looking to support them? So if you want to know one of the things I think about that a lot, and how are we ensuring that people can make good decisions as they move forward.
That's what I say to my kids. I have 2 teenage girls, and I routinely look at them and say, make good decisions, And
yes.
and sometimes it's just that extra pause to remind ourselves of some of these things. I like to think I have an impact. I don't always know, but
I'm sure you do.
So what kinds of actionable things would you suggest to some of the younger leaders out there? How should they think about growing their own advisory practices? What are the things, as you said, things that they can do now that couldn't be done 10 or 20 years ago? Where do you think they should focus? Where do you think this industry is headed? I guess that's the question.
So I think there's, being a leader in their organization, there's a few things. One is that you want to build a team around you that has strengths that you don't have, right? So as you think about your role and your role in the organization, is how do you have the right support model around you? And that takes time, and you don't always have the dollars to do it. But as you think about that, you start to build for that. The other thing is thinking about what are your clients' needs. I think if you always lend back to who you serve, and then you're thinking about who you're serving, then you can kind of work your way back into what are the things that I need to bring forward. And that requires a lot of listening. The past year of going back to school and really being a student at my age required me to kind of think about things in a way that I hadn't. And looking at what's happening now, like AI is a great example. Like, how are you thinking about using AI to make you more efficient, right? How are you going to look at technology in a way that makes you more efficient and allows you to do that client-facing work, or if not it makes someone on your team to be doing that? Because it's always in that engagement and meeting the clients where they are that you'll be able to grow and scale. The other thing, this is something we've just learned a long time ago. It's like customizing versus personalizing. Be thoughtful about how you're supporting your clients. If you have 1,000 clients and all of them have 1,000 different models, like that is not really a personalized experience. It might be customized, but how are you truly engaging when you create that much choice? And I'm not saying that you don't provide the choices that you need for your end investor clients, but more importantly, is it in service to them? Or is it only because it's a little tweak and it makes you feel like you've done something a little bit extra? Like, what's really in service? Is in service to them really delivering on their outcomes that they've identified to you with their goals and keeping them properly, invested, versus, are you focused on, we give it a little bit, a little bit pinker here or a little bit yellow there. Is that really different? So I think we have to constantly challenge ourselves where it's not our ego. It really should be focused on being in service to our clients.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, we find that advisors are looking to improve not just in helping the clients make better decisions, but just as important is helping them be confident in the decisions that they make so that they can stick with them. You talked about behaviorism. That's kind of at the core of what we do. And we have a psychometric study that's one of the two dimensions that Tolerisk measures. But what's interesting, I think, is that the other dimension, which is based on financial data,
right,
is often the one that advisors cite drives their clients' confidence in the decision. It's not the behavioral profile. The behavioral profile helps establish kind of somebody's underlying temperament. How risk-seeking to risk-averse is this individual compared to a broader population? And that's important because advisors, we cater specifically to fiduciaries, so they never want to suggest that the client take more risk than they believe the client's willing to accept. That sort of serves as a cap. But what drives confidence in the decisions is that the client sees that the advisor is customizing, or you're going to have to explain the customizing versus personalizing. I think I might have mixed the two up, but that the advisor is tailoring it to this client, that this was for them. It's not one and done, that they feel it. It's not just, a little more pinkish or a little more yellowish. It really is a reflection of this client's unique circumstances, and they have to see it and feel it, and that's what drives confidence. That's what makes them feel like this is really specifically about me, and I can visualize and see how much risk I am taking, I should be taking, how it's going to change, my risk of running out of money, all the things that the client has some some concern about, it's really about driving confidence in that process. And that's what leads to a better advisor-client experience. It helps the client avoid behavioral mistakes, which is so important. That's being able to stick with the path, we find ends up being more important than exactly how much risk you were taking or exactly how markets have performed. It's the abandonment that causes such significant problems for most examples. And so being able to have that confidence to stick with it ends up being what provides the better experience for the client. And of course, from our constituents and the folks on this call are generally advisors, or they work in advisory firms.
Right.
So for them, they want to impress prospects, so they want to drive up conversion. Well, that's kind of through that engagement experience. They want to deepen confidence with clients because that's who exhibits the highest levels of retention. That's who makes the referrals. So it's good for them from a business development standpoint, as well as, of course, serving their clients.
So think about what you're saying is that most importantly, it's the planning. I've listened to you. I understand what your goals are, and we're going to build a plan for you. The investments are a part of that. That's a part of it. But most importantly, it's the overall planning, and then it's the back end. How are we doing against your plan? How are we doing? Has something changed? Are you thinking? Are you changing jobs? Are you retiring? Is anything happening in your life that's changing that plan? So what is it? A plan's a plan till you get punched in the face, right? Like, so now as the advisor, right? Like, you need to step on in and help them, because one of the things I met this amazing advisor years ago when I was in sales, and he said, when money can't fix it, right, that's when the advisor makes all the difference, because we've done the plan. Someone's sick. We can't fix that. But the money, because we have the plan, you don't need to worry. We got you. We can't do this. All right, let's sit down and replan. Like, because the advisor then can step in as that trusted advisor, say, let's help you get over that. And that makes it different. So I do think that's where it's personalized, right? The personalization of hearing you and building that plan for you and communicating. So that financial advisor, truly, that's where the rubber meets the road. I think it's really important.
I love that quote, by the way. That's a Mike Tyson quote, is that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. I actually wrote a piece that was based on that last year that was called something like Mike Tyson's a Financial Planning Genius. And it really is, financial planning is very much like that, right? I mean, yeah, we all have a plan, and then something happens, right? And life's about balance, right? If we, in a sense, plan for every adverse outcome, then we'll all be working until we're 97, or we'll be living so modestly, because what if all of these negative events happen? What if we have a natural disaster? What if we have a medical disaster? What if, our kids become dependent on us as adults? What if our parents are still dependent on us as adults? What if every single, by themselves, potentially realistic example, what if they all happen, right? And so the problem is, it's hard to balance out lifestyle, right, with the what if that could drive everybody nuts. And I think advisors, that's a big part of their role. I hear it all the time. The advisors say, I'm my client's financial therapist, or as you put it, it's about behaviorism. How do we arm them? How do we arm the advisors as technology providers to excel in those roles and to help the personalization, and also help the client exhibit the best behaviors so that they can achieve their goals? The investment management is a part of that. Right. I think the perception, fair or unfair, is that the asset management has become commoditized. The instruments have become commoditized. ETFs, mutual funds, et cetera. Now, again, I think that's an overgeneralization, and it's not necessarily always fair, but I think for a lot of the retail consumers, that's the perception. And your point that the relationship and the service is really about the planning, I think is really, really important.
And I think that's where it makes a difference. I mean, when again, these are tools. The investment management pieces are tools to be used to get the outcome you're looking for, but they're not everything, right? It is really in that planning environment that makes a difference.
I'll ask you one more.
Okay.
Which is, again, I'm thinking life is about balance. So as you have held these high-powered positions for a lot of years, how do you strike balance? Because, some of our younger executives that may be listening today deal with that. Many of them are workaholics. Many of them have significant responsibilities, but many of them also want to have home lives. They have children, they have spouses, they have parents. They need to maintain their own mental sanity. And so what advice do you have for the young execs who are trying to figure out the balance between creating and fostering the successful work environment and sort of the airplane, put the mask on yourself first? You have to have to have that balance too. You can't help other people and help be a great steward of your company if you don't have that kind of balance.
Oh, I think balance is really hard to get. Where flex is, one of my friends, Callie Yost, has written a book from flex. Like, it's a work-life flex. So some moments in time you're running really hard, and other times you can flex your week. Like, all right, now this week I'm going to take these 2 days, and I'm going to take the kids. We're going to go away. We're going to go to the museum. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to go to the park. Like, how are you thinking about making those times? Because those are moments in time you can't quite get back. But it isn't easy. I think one of the things that helped me was I had an executive coach, which is why I did that. And it allowed me to understand kind of the rhythms of my week, where I knew by Friday afternoon I should not talk to anyone. I should shut it down, because I like to work Sunday nights for a little bit, because I was going to break glass on Friday afternoon, which I was going to be picking up the whole next week, because now I'm cranky, now I'm tired, and now I'm acting not as nice as I should act, and therefore creating relationship challenges where I needed a moment. So those are things that you need to do some introspection around yourself. I think that's helpful. Understand where you are be most effective. And then all I can say is you do the best you can, right? Like, all of us, all we can do is do the best we can, because it's not an easy balance, especially if you're starting out and creating a new business, because that's helping for your family as well. So how do you balance that out? I don't know if I quite did it as well as I should have, but I keep trying to make up for it.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20. I've learned that.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been amazing. The time has flown by. I can't believe we've already been chatting for 40 minutes. So I really, really appreciate it. If somebody wants to learn more about executive coaching, or they want to learn more about what your firm does, where do they find that information?
So I'm on LinkedIn as N Beaman. You can get to see me there. Also, N Beaman at eastbaymerchants.com. So, but the LinkedIn, if you get me there and message me there, I can get back to you.
And if anybody has trouble connecting with Noreen, you reach out to us at Tolerisk. We'll make sure that happens too. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here. I learned a lot. I hope you all did as well, and I really appreciate it, Noreen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I truly appreciate having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye now.